How does a single night with my husband's brother lead to divorce papers served in front of my colleagues? What happens when the villain, everyone pities, quietly collects evidence instead of fighting back? Can I still blame him for ruining our family when all his revenge was done by the book, with the law on his side? I'm Elena Fenwick, and this is my story. Not the sanitized version I told my friends, not the sob story I fed my mother, but the real truth. The kind that makes your stomach twist when you're alone at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything went so wrong. It started with something so simple, so reasonable. I just wanted my husband Jonas to notice me again. After 8 years of marriage and one beautiful daughter, I felt invisible in my own home. Jonas would come back from his high school teaching job, grade papers until midnight, and fall asleep without so much as a goodnight kiss. I'd lie there listening to his steady breathing, feeling like a stranger in my own bed. "You're being dramatic, Elena," he'd say whenever I brought it up. "I'm working hard for our family." But what about me? What about my needs? I was 34 years old, working as an operations manager at a mid-sized consulting firm, juggling Eva's soccer practice and piano lessons, managing our household finances. And for what? To be treated like a roommate? The kitchen was where most of our fights happened. That Tuesday evening in March, I'd made his favorite dinner, grilled salmon with asparagus, the way his mother taught me. Ava was upstairs doing homework, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have an actual conversation. "How was your day?" I asked, setting his plate down with perhaps a little more force than necessary. Jonas looked up from his phone briefly. "Fine. The district is implementing new testing requirements. I'll be staying late tomorrow to prep." Again, the word came out sharper than I intended. "You've worked late 3 times this week already." "The students need—" "What about what I need?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "What about what Eva needs? She asked me yesterday why Daddy doesn't read bedtime stories anymore." Jonas set down his fork and looked at me with those tired grey eyes that used to make my heart skip. Now they just made me feel small. "I'm doing my best, Elena. I thought you understood that." "I understand that I'm married to a ghost," I shot back. "I understand that I haven't felt like your wife in months." He sighed, that infuriating, patient sigh that made me want to scream. "What do you want from me? I work, I come home, I help with Eva when I can. I don't know what else you expect." "I expect you to want me." The words burst out before I could stop them. "I expect you to miss me when I'm not here, to look forward to coming home to me, to act like you actually chose to marry me instead of just tolerating my presence." The silence that followed was deafening. Eva's footsteps creaked overhead, and I wondered if she'd heard us fighting again. Jonas stared at his plate, jaw clenched, and I knew I'd crossed some invisible line. "I do want you," he said quietly, "but I can't be everything you need all the time. I'm exhausted, Elena. I'm trying to be a good teacher, a good father, a good husband, and I'm failing at all of it." For a moment, I almost softened, almost reached across the table to take his hand. But then he picked up his phone again, scrolling through work emails while his dinner got cold, and the moment shattered. "Fine," I said, clearing my plate, even though I'd barely touched my food. "I'll just add emotional support to the list of things I handle myself." That night, I called my mother, Sophie Park. She listened to my complaints with the appropriate amount of outrage, telling me what I needed to hear. "You're too young to live like a nun, sweetheart," she said. "Jonas needs to step up or step aside. A woman has needs." My best friend, Marina Holmes, was even more supportive when we met for coffee the next day. "Honestly, Eleanor, I don't know how you stand it. David would never treat me like that. Jonas is taking you for granted." It felt good to have allies, people who validated my frustration, but it was Micah's text that really changed everything. Jonas's younger brother had always been the sensitive one in the family. 4 years younger, an accountant with gentle hands and kind eyes, Micah had been checking in on me more often lately. Just friendly messages at first, asking how Eva was doing, if I needed help with anything while Jonas worked late. That Tuesday night, as I lay in bed next to my sleeping husband, my phone buzzed softly. "Are you okay? You seemed upset at dinner Sunday." I stared at the message in the dark, my heart racing for reasons I didn't want to examine too closely. Someone had noticed. Someone cared enough to ask. I typed back, "Just tired. Thanks for asking. Want to talk about it? I'm a good listener." My finger hovered over the keyboard. This was dangerous territory, and I knew it. But Jonas was snoring softly beside me, and I felt so lonely I could scream. "Maybe sometime. Thanks, Micah." "Anytime. You deserve better, Elena." I deleted the conversation before putting my phone away, but I couldn't delete the warm feeling in my chest. Someone thought I deserved better. Someone saw me. The next morning, Jonas left early for a faculty meeting without saying goodbye. I made Eva breakfast, dropped her at school, and drove to work with Micah's words echoing in my mind. "You deserve better." Maybe I did. The affair didn't start with grand gestures or passionate declarations. It started with coffee. Micah texted me the following Thursday, asking if I wanted to grab lunch and vent about Jonas. I should have said no. I should have told him it wasn't appropriate, that I needed to work things out with my husband directly. Instead, I found myself sitting across from him at a quiet cafe downtown, pouring out my frustrations to someone who actually listened. "He makes me feel invisible," I confided, stirring my latte absently. "Like I'm just part of the furniture, the woman who cooks and cleans and manages Eva's schedule, but not someone he actually wants to be with." Micah leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "That's insane. You're amazing, Elena. You're smart, beautiful, funny. Any man would be lucky to have your attention." The compliment hit me like a drug. When was the last time Jonas had called me beautiful? When was the last time he'd looked at me the way Micah was looking at me right now? "You're just being nice," I said, but I was smiling. "I'm being honest." He reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. "Jonas doesn't know what he has." I should have pulled away. Instead, I let my fingers linger under his for just a moment too long. That evening, Jonas came home with Chinese takeout and a distracted smile. "Sorry I'm late. Faculty meeting ran long. I got your favorite, Kung Pao chicken." It was a peace offering, I realized. His way of trying to make up for our fight earlier in the week. 2 months ago, I would have been grateful. Now it felt like too little, too late. "Thanks," I said, taking the containers to the kitchen. "Eva already ate. She's upstairs doing homework." "How was your day?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Fine. Had lunch with a friend." "That's nice. Marina?" I paused, my back to him as I opened the takeout containers. "No, someone else." He didn't ask who, and somehow that stung more than if he'd been suspicious. He just nodded and started talking about his day, about difficult students and administrative headaches, while I served our dinner and pretended to listen. Later that night, after Eva was asleep and Jonas was grading papers in his study, I texted Micah. "Thanks for lunch today. It was nice to feel heard." He responded immediately. "Thanks for trusting me with your feelings. You can talk to me any time." Jonas brought home Chinese food tonight, his idea of romance. "You deserve so much more than takeout apologies." "What do I deserve?" I typed, then deleted it. Too forward, too obvious. Instead, I wrote, "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be with someone who actually sees me." "You'd be worshipped," came his immediate reply. "The way you should be." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. We were definitely crossing a line now, and I knew it. But I didn't stop. "Careful, Micah. A girl could get used to compliments like that." Maybe she should. I deleted the conversation again, but this time I saved his number under a different name in my contacts, just in case. The texting became a daily habit. Good morning messages, complaints about work, little observations about life that I used to share with Jonas. Micah was always interested, always supportive, always available. When Jonas worked late, Micah would text to keep me company. When I had a rough day at the office, he'd send funny memes to cheer me up. "You're glowing lately," Marina observed when we met for our weekly happy hour. "New skincare routine?" I laughed, sipping my wine. "Just feeling better about things, I guess." "Things with Jonas?" "Things in general." I couldn't tell her about Micah, not yet. She'd either tell me to stop or encourage me to go further, and I wasn't ready for either conversation. But Jonas's mother, Miriam, was more observant than I'd given her credit for. She cornered me at Eva's soccer game the following Saturday, her sharp blue eyes studying my face. "You seem different, dear," she said in that deceptively gentle tone she used when she was fishing for information. "Different how?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the field where Eva was chasing the ball with single-minded determination. "Happier, more energetic. It's nice to see." There was something in her voice that made me look at her directly. Miriam had never particularly liked me, though she'd always been polite. Jonas was her precious eldest son, and no woman would ever be good enough for him in her eyes. "I've been trying to focus on the positive," I said carefully. She was quiet for a moment. "Jonas mentioned you've been going out more. Lunch dates with friends. Is that a problem?" "Not at all. A woman needs friends. I just hope—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I hope you remember that marriage requires work from both people. Sometimes we have to fight for what we want instead of looking for it elsewhere." The warning was subtle but clear. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my voice level. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Miriam." "I'm not implying anything, dear. Just offering some wisdom from someone who's been married for 38 years. That night, Jonas tried to initiate sex for the first time in weeks. I let him, but my mind wandered to Micah's messages, to the way he looked at me, to what it might feel like to be touched by someone who actually wanted me. Jonas finished quickly and rolled over, already half asleep, and I stared at the ceiling wondering if this was all there was. My phone buzzed with a text from Micah. "Hope you're having a good evening. Thinking of you." I typed back, "Wish I was having dinner with you instead of sitting here alone." "You're not alone. I'm here." "It's not the same." "It could be, whenever you're ready." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I care about you, Elena. More than I should, probably, but I can't help it." My hands were shaking as I typed, "We can't. You're his brother." "I know, but that doesn't change how I feel, or how you feel if I'm reading the signs right." I didn't respond that night, but I didn't delete the conversation either. The company holiday party was my undoing. Jonas was supposed to come with me, but Eva came down with the flu that morning, and someone needed to stay home with her. "You should still go," he said, taking her temperature while she lay listlessly on the couch. "You've been looking forward to it all week." I had been looking forward to it, but not for the reasons he thought. Micah had mentioned he might stop by. He did accounting work for several companies that would be represented there. "Are you sure? I could stay home instead." "No, go ahead. One of us should enjoy the evening. Just don't drink too much wine and embarrass yourself," he said with a tired smile. The comment stung, even though I knew he meant it as a joke. When was the last time he'd worried about me embarrassing him because I was having too much fun? When was the last time he'd seen me as someone capable of being wild or unpredictable? I spent extra time getting ready, choosing a black dress that hugged my curves and made me feel powerful. Marina whistled when she saw me at the hotel ballroom. "Damn, girl, Jonas is going to regret missing this." "Jonas is home with a sick 8-year-old, watching Disney movies and making chicken soup," I said, accepting a glass of wine from a passing waiter. "His loss. You look incredible." I did feel incredible. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not just a wife and mother, but a woman. Men were noticing me, colleagues were complimenting my dress, and I was having actual adult conversations about things that had nothing to do with grocery lists or parent-teacher conferences. Micah arrived around 9, looking devastatingly handsome in a navy suit that brought out his eyes. He found me at the bar, laughing at something my HR manager Priya had said about the new intern. "Elena," he said, his voice warm, "you look stunning." "Thank you." I could feel myself blushing. "I wasn't sure you'd make it." "Wouldn't miss it. Dance with me." I should have said no. I should have made an excuse, found Marina, gone home to my husband and daughter. Instead, I let him lead me onto the dance floor, let him pull me close, let myself melt into his arms as we swayed to some generic jazz standard. "I've been thinking about our conversation," he murmured in my ear. "Which one?" But I knew which one. "You know which one." His hand pressed against my lower back, holding me closer. "I meant what I said, Elena. About caring for you." "Micah." I started to pull away, but he held me gently in place. "I know it's complicated, I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you." The wine was making me bold, or maybe it was just the relief of being wanted again. "What are you asking me to do?" "I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just telling you how I feel. What you do with that information is up to you." The song ended, but we didn't separate immediately. I could see Marina watching us from across the room, her eyebrows raised. Other colleagues were starting to notice too. The way we stood just a little too close, the way his hand lingered on my waist. "People are watching," I whispered. "Let them watch. You deserve to be looked at like you're precious." The words hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time Jonas had made me feel precious? When was the last time anyone had? "I should go," I said, but I didn't move. Should and want are two different things. He was right. I should go home to my sick daughter and tired husband. I should stop this before it went any further. But I wanted to stay, wanted to keep dancing, wanted to feel alive and desired and important. "One more dance," I heard myself say. We danced 3 more songs. By the end of the evening, half the party had seen us together, had watched him whisper in my ear and make me laugh and hold me like I was something valuable. I didn't care. For one night, I felt like the woman I used to be before marriage and motherhood wore me down to nothing. Micah walked me to my car, his hand warm on my elbow. "Thank you for tonight," I said, fumbling with my keys. "Thank you for letting me hold you." "Micah, You don't have to say anything. Just think about what I said. You deserve to be happy, Elena. You deserve to be cherished." He kissed my cheek, soft and sweet, and I closed my eyes and pretended for just a moment that this was my real life, that I was going home to someone who couldn't wait to see me, who would ask about my evening and actually listen to the answer. Instead, I drove home to a dark house. Jonas was asleep on the couch, Eva curled up next to him with her favorite blanket. They looked peaceful, complete without me. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching them, feeling like an intruder in my own home. Jonas stirred when I turned on the lamp. "How was the party?" "Fine," I said, kicking off my heels. "How's Eva?" "Fever broke around 10. She should be better tomorrow." He stretched, checking his watch. "It's late. Good party." "It was okay. You didn't miss much." But that was a lie. He'd missed everything. He'd missed seeing his wife feel beautiful and desired and alive. He'd missed the moment when everything changed, when I stopped being his devoted wife and became someone else entirely. That night, I lay in bed next to him, listening to his steady breathing, and made a decision that would destroy everything we'd built together. I was done being invisible. I was done settling for scraps of attention and take-out apologies. I was going to take what I wanted, consequences be damned. The next morning, I texted Micah, "Can we meet for coffee today? I want to talk." His response was immediate. "Of course, name the time and place." 2:00, that cafe on 5th Street. And Micah? "Yes?" "Thank you for last night, for making me feel beautiful." "You are beautiful, Elena, inside and out. See you at 2. I deleted the conversation and went to make breakfast for my family, humming softly to myself. Jonas looked up from his coffee, surprised. "You're in a good mood this morning." "Why shouldn't I be? It's a beautiful day." He smiled, and for a moment he looked like the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "I like seeing you happy. If only he knew what was making me happy. If only he'd tried harder to be the source of that happiness himself. But it was too late for that now. I'd already made my choice. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. I chose a corner table, somewhere we could talk privately, and waited for Micah with my heart hammering against my ribs. He arrived exactly on time, looking nervous but determined. We ordered our drinks in awkward small talk, both of us knowing this conversation would change everything. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began once we were seated. And you're right, I do deserve to be happy. I deserve to feel wanted and appreciated and alive. Micah reached across the table and took my hand. "You do. You deserve all of that and more." "But I'm married, Micah. To your brother. What we're talking about, it's not just cheating, it's betraying family." "I know." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "I've thought about that too. I've tried to stay away, tried to convince myself these feelings would pass. But they're not passing, Elena. If anything, they're getting stronger." I stared down at our joined hands. His fingers were long and gentle, so different from Jonas's blunt, practical ones. "What are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to let me love you the way you deserve to be loved, even if it's complicated, even if it's secret, even if it can't last forever. You deserve to know what it feels like to be someone's priority." The words were everything I'd been desperate to hear for months. Someone wanted to make me their priority. Someone wanted to love me properly. "If we do this," I said slowly, "there's no going back. Everything changes." "I know. Your relationship with Jonas, our family dynamics, everything." "I know," he repeated, "but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. And I don't think you can either." He was right. I was tired of pretending, tired of settling, tired of feeling like a ghost in my own life. "One condition," I said. "Eva can never know. Whatever happens between us, she stays protected." "Of course, I would never do anything to hurt her." I took a deep breath and made the decision that would unravel everything. "Okay. Okay? Okay, let's see where this goes." The relief on his face was immediate and overwhelming. He lifted my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles softly. "You won't regret this, Elena, I promise." But I was already regretting it, even as excitement coursed through my veins. Not because I didn't want him, but because I knew there would be a price to pay. There always was. We started slowly. Coffee dates became lunch dates, became long conversations in his car after work. Micah was everything Jonas wasn't. Attentive, romantic, completely focused on me when we were together. He remembered details about my day, asked follow-up questions about work drama, brought me flowers for no reason other than he'd seen them and thought of me. "You're glowing again," Marina observed after 2 weeks of secret meetings. "Seriously, what's your secret? New vitamins?" "Just taking better care of myself," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. At home, the distance between Jonas and me grew wider. He was still working late, still distracted, still treating me like a roommate rather than a wife. But now, instead of fighting about it, I just smiled and nodded and counted the hours until I could see Micah again. "You seem different lately," Jonas said one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "Happier, but also more distant. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I assured him. "I'm just trying to be more independent, like you suggested." "I never suggested you be independent. I said I was doing my best." "Same thing, isn't it?" He frowned, but Eva chose that moment to run into the kitchen, asking for help with her math homework, and the conversation ended. That night, I met Micah at his apartment for the first time. It was supposed to be just for coffee, somewhere more private to talk. But the moment he closed the door behind us, the tension that had been building for weeks finally snapped. "Elena," he whispered, cupping my face in his hands. "Are you sure about this?" I answered by kissing him, pouring months of loneliness and frustration and need into that single contact. He responded immediately, his arms wrapping around me like I was something precious he'd been waiting his whole life to hold. We made love on his couch, slow and tender, and completely different from the mechanical encounters I'd grown used to with Jonas. Micah touched me like he was memorizing every inch of my skin, whispered my name like a prayer, made me feel beautiful and desired, and absolutely cherished. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers combing through my hair. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it's too soon to say it. I know the situation is impossible, but I needed you to know." "I love you too," I whispered back, and meant it. Maybe it was just infatuation, maybe it was just the thrill of being wanted again, but in that moment, it felt like love. I got home at 11:30, expecting to find Jonas asleep. Instead, he was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop, grading papers. "You're up late," I said, trying to sound casual. "Could say the same about you. Where were you?" "Out with Marina. We went to that new wine bar downtown. Marina called here around 9 looking for you. Said you'd cancelled dinner plans." My blood turned to ice. I'd completely forgotten about dinner with Marina, too caught up in my afternoon with Micah to remember my cover story. "She must have gotten confused," I said, hanging up my coat with hands that I hoped weren't shaking. "We rescheduled for next week." Jonas looked at me for a long moment, and I wondered if he could smell Micah's cologne on my skin, if guilt was written across my face in bold letters. "Elena," he said finally, "if something's wrong, if you're unhappy, we should talk about it. Really talk, not just fight." For a moment, I almost told him everything, almost confessed and begged for forgiveness and asked him to fight for our marriage. But then I remembered how it felt to be in Micah's arms, to be someone's priority, to feel alive and wanted and loved. "Nothing's wrong," I said. "I'm just tired. Long day." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on me as I headed upstairs. I took a long shower, washing away the evidence of my betrayal, and crawled into bed next to my husband, feeling like a stranger in my own life. But I didn't feel guilty. Not yet. I felt alive for the first time in years, and I wasn't ready to give that up. Not for Jonas, not for anyone. The lies became easier after that first night. Coffee meetings became afternoon errands. Working late became dinner dates. I created an elaborate web of deceptions, and Marina unknowingly became my primary alibi. "Just tell Jonas we're having girls' nights," she said when I explained I needed cover for some me-time activities. "God knows you deserve some fun after putting up with his workaholic tendencies." I let her believe I was just going to yoga classes and spa treatments, harmless self-care that any neglected wife deserved. She was so supportive of my newfound independence that she'd probably lie for me even if she knew the truth. The family dinner at Miriam's house 3 weeks into the affair was my first real test. Jonas's whole family would be there. His parents, his brothers Colin and Micah, Eva and me. I'd have to sit across from my lover and pretend he was just my brother-in-law, nothing more. "You look nice," Jonas said as I put on lipstick in the car. "That dress is new, isn't it?" "I bought it last month," I lied. "Micah had bought it for me 2 days ago, said the blue brought out my eyes. I just haven't had anywhere to wear it." "Well, you look beautiful." The compliment should have made me happy, but instead it felt like too little, too late. Where were these compliments when I was begging for his attention? Where was this appreciation when I was dying of loneliness in our own home? Miriam's dining room was warm and crowded, filled with the comfortable chaos of family dinner. Eva immediately ran to her grandmother, chattering about school and soccer and her latest art project. Colin was telling some story about his new job, gesturing wildly with his fork, and Micah was watching me from across the table, his eyes dark with secrets. Elena, you're positively glowing, Miriam observed as she passed the potatoes. Married life must be agreeing with you. She's been taking better care of herself lately, Jonas said, squeezing my shoulder. Yoga classes, time with friends. It's good to see her happy. Yoga, Colin snorted. Remember when you tried yoga, Micah? You couldn't touch your toes for a week. I'm more flexible now, Micah said, his eyes never leaving mine. Amazing what the right motivation can do. Heat flooded my cheeks, and I quickly looked down at my plate. Jonas was oblivious, laughing at his brother's joke, but Miriam was watching us with sharp eyes. Eva, sweetheart, tell Grandma about your art project, I said, desperate to redirect attention. Eva launched into an enthusiastic description of her family portrait assignment, and I tried to focus on her words instead of the way Micah's foot was brushing against mine under the table. I drew Daddy at his desk with all his papers, Eva said, and Mommy in the kitchen making dinner, and our house with the big tree in front. What about Uncle Micah? Miriam asked. Is he in the picture? I drew him standing next to Mommy, Eva said innocently. He comes over sometimes when Daddy's working late. The room went quiet. Jonas looked confused. Colin raised his eyebrows, and Miriam's expression grew sharp as a blade. Uncle Micah comes over, Jonas asked slowly. Just to check on things, Micah said quickly. You know, make sure the girls are okay when you're stuck at school late. That's thoughtful, Jonas said, but there was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Suspicion. I asked him to. I jumped in. You know how nervous I get when you're not home. It's nice to have family nearby. Of course, Miriam said smoothly. Family should look out for each other, though I'm sure Elena is perfectly capable of taking care of herself and Eva. Absolutely, I said, forcing a smile. Micah's just being kind. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. Jonas was quiet for the rest of dinner, and I caught him watching Micah and me with new eyes. When we said goodbye, Micah hugged me just a beat too long, and I saw Jonas notice. The drive home was tense. I didn't know Micah had been coming by the house, Jonas said finally. It's not a big deal. He just stops by sometimes when he's in the neighborhood. How often is sometimes? I don't know, a few times. Why does it matter? It doesn't, I guess. I just wish you'd mentioned it. Why? You don't mention every conversation you have with your coworkers. That's different. How is it different? Jonas was quiet for a moment. I don't know. It just is. But I could see him thinking, could practically hear the gears turning in his head. Eva's innocent comment had planted a seed of doubt, and I knew it would only grow from here. That night, after Eva was asleep and Jonas was in his study, I texted Micah. We need to be more careful. I know. I'm sorry about dinner. I couldn't help myself. Eva drew you in her family picture, standing next to me. Kids are perceptive. Maybe she sees what we're trying to hide. That's what I'm afraid of. Do you want to stop? We can stop if this is too risky. I stared at the message for a long time. The smart thing would be to end it now, before Jonas got suspicious, before anyone got hurt. But the thought of going back to my old life, to being invisible and unappreciated and lonely, made me physically sick. No, I typed back. I don't want to stop. I just want to be smarter about it. Then we'll be smarter. I love you too much to lose you now. I love you too. But as I deleted the conversation and crept upstairs to bed, I wondered if love was worth the web of lies I was weaving. Jonas was already asleep, turned away from me, and I lay in the dark, listening to his breathing and trying not to think about how much I was risking for a few stolen hours of happiness. The next morning, Jonas left early for a faculty meeting without saying goodbye. I found a bank statement on the kitchen counter, one I didn't remember him reviewing. Several charges were highlighted in yellow. Restaurants I'd never been to, at least not with him. Times when I'd claimed to be at yoga or shopping, but had actually been with Micah. My hand shook as I realized what this meant. Jonas wasn't just suspicious, He was investigating. And if he was investigating, it was only a matter of time before he found the truth. The evidence was damning, and Jonas had been collecting it methodically. I found this out on a Thursday evening in May, when he came home from work with a manila folder and the expression of a man who'd been betrayed by someone he trusted. "We need to talk," he said, setting the folder on the kitchen table. Eva was at soccer practice with my mother, so we had the house to ourselves. I'd been dreading this moment for weeks, ever since I'd seen the highlighted bank statement, but I'd also been preparing for it, crafting explanations and justifications in my head. "About what?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I loaded the dishwasher. "About where you've really been spending your time, about the lies you've been telling me, about my brother." The words hit me like physical blows. I turned to face him, and the look in his eyes made my stomach clench. This wasn't the tired, distracted Jonas I'd grown used to. This was someone I'd never seen before. Cold, focused, and completely done with my bullshit. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Jonas opened the folder and spread its contents across the table. Bank statements with highlighted charges, printouts of text message records showing frequent communication with a number he'd identified as Micah's, a timeline he'd created, mapping my claimed whereabouts against credit card transactions and phone records. "You're having an affair with my brother," he said quietly. "I have proof." The evidence was overwhelming. There was no point in denying it anymore, but I tried anyway. "This is crazy, Jonas. You're being paranoid." "Stop." His voice cut through my protests like a knife. "Just stop lying to me. I know you've been sleeping with Micah. I know you've been using Marina as cover. I know you've been lying to my face for weeks." I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "How long have you known?" I suspected something after Eva's drawing. "I've known for sure for 2 weeks." "2 weeks?" I stared at him. "You've known for 2 weeks and you didn't say anything?" I wanted to be certain. I wanted to have all the facts before I confronted you. Of course he did. Jonas never did anything impulsively. Even discovering his wife's betrayal, he'd approached it like a research project. "So what now?" I asked. "You divorce me? Take Eva? Ruin both our lives?" "I don't know yet." He sat down across from me, and I was surprised to see pain in his eyes along with the anger. "I keep trying to understand why. Was I really such a terrible husband that you had to sleep with my brother?" The question hung between us, and I realized this was my chance to explain, to make him understand, to maybe even save our marriage. "You made me feel invisible," I said. "For months I felt like I didn't matter to you, like I was just the woman who cooked your dinner and raised your daughter and managed your household. You never looked at me, never really talked to me, never made me feel wanted or appreciated or loved. So you decided to sleep with Micah. I decided to find someone who actually saw me as a person, someone who made me feel alive again." Jonas was quiet for a long moment. "Did it ever occur to you to talk to me about this, to tell me how you were feeling instead of just this? I tried. I told you I felt neglected. I told you I needed more attention. I told you I was unhappy. You just said you were doing your best and went back to grading papers. So this is my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault." "You're saying exactly that." He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a stranger. "You're saying I drove you into my brother's bed because I didn't pay enough attention to you. I'm saying I was lonely, and he was there, and he made me feel things I hadn't felt in years." "Things like what? Love?" The question was a trap, and I knew it, but I was tired of lying, tired of pretending, tired of feeling guilty for wanting to be happy. "Yes," I said. "Love. He loves me, Jonas. Really loves me, not just tolerates me because we're married and it's convenient." The words hit him like a slap. I saw him flinch, saw something break behind his eyes. "You love him." "I do." "And you think he loves you?" "I know he does." Jonas laughed, but there was no humor in it. Elena, he's 28 years old. He's never had a serious relationship. You're his older brother's wife, forbidden fruit. Do you really think this is love, or do you think you're just a conquest? You don't know him like I do. I've known him his entire life. I changed his diapers, taught him to ride a bike, helped him with homework. He's always wanted what I had, always competed with me, and now he has my wife. The words stung because there was truth in them, but I pushed the doubt away, clinging to my justifications. This isn't about you and Micah. This is about you and me, and the fact that our marriage was over long before I met him for coffee. Our marriage was over, just like that. 8 years, a daughter, a life together, and it was just over. It was dying, Jonas. We were like strangers living in the same house. So you decided to kill it completely instead of trying to save it. I didn't have an answer for that, because he was right. I had chosen the nuclear option instead of fighting for our marriage. But I'd been so tired of fighting, so tired of feeling unwanted, so tired of settling for scraps of affection. What do you want me to say? I asked finally. That I'm sorry, that I regret it, that I'll end things with Micah and we'll go back to the way things were. I want you to tell me the truth. Do you want to save our marriage, or do you want to be with my brother? It was the question I'd been avoiding for weeks, the moment of truth that would determine the rest of our lives. I don't know, I whispered. Jonas nodded slowly, like my answer confirmed something he'd already suspected. Then I guess we both have some decisions to make, he said, gathering up his evidence and putting it back in the folder. I'll be staying in the guest room tonight. We'll figure out what to tell Eva in the morning. He stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, Elena, I did love you. I still do. I just don't know if that's enough anymore. After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not for Jonas, not for our relationship, but for Eva. For the little girl who was about to learn that families could break apart, that love wasn't always enough, that sometimes the people you trusted most were the ones who hurt you. I picked up my phone to text Micah, to tell him what had happened, to seek comfort from the man I'd destroyed my marriage for. But for the first time since this all began, I hesitated. Jonas's words echoed in my head. He's always wanted what I had. Was I just another prize in some lifelong competition between brothers? Or was this real? I was about to find out.